So as a lot of you may already know from following my blog or being part of my newsletter, I have struggled a lot with sleep in the past, and I've had to make a lot of my own adjustments to improve my own sleep. Now, a lot of the ideas that I got about improving my sleep has actually come through me leading on pain management programs where we talk about improving sleep to improve pain and fatigue. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to let you know a little bit about sleep, and then I'm also going to dive into 10 ways in which you can improve your sleep. So the amount of sleep that we need varies from individual to individual, and there isn't a specific set amount that everyone needs because everyone will require different levels of rest and sleep. However, typically we need between 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night as adults. Now, it isn't just the quantity of sleep that's important, but also the quality. We go through different stages of sleep at night, and each sleep cycle roughly takes around 90 minutes, and that will go through light sleep all the way through to deep sleep. Now, what we know for people who suffer from persistent pain or persistent pain conditions such as fibromyalgia or chronic widespread pain is that the deeper levels of sleep are harder to come by. And it's these deeper levels of sleep that are really, really important for our cognition the next day. So things like memory, concentration, finding the right word for things. And if we're not getting the deep levels of sleep, that's what we can be struggling with the next day. So sleep is not just important for our physical health and mental health in the moment, but it also is a really good way of managing pain and fatigue. But it also can be really helpful at improving our brain health in general in the short and long term, and improving things like our weight control as well. If we're not sleeping too well, in the long term, it can increase our risk of diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, certain types of cancers, and increased levels of stress and anxiety. Okay, so here are my 10 top tips for improving your sleep. So number 1 is to go to bed and to wake up at the same time every day. This allows our body to get into a routine. There's also a hormone called melatonin, which is involved in sleep. Melatonin is our sleep hormone, and what we want is for our levels of melatonin to be the highest at night, just as we're about to go to sleep. If we don't have a solid routine around when we're going to bed and waking up, then our melatonin levels can be a little bit off. Also, our body just doesn't know whether it's time to go to sleep or not. Number 2 is to have a 90-minute wind-down routine. This is really important because it just prepares us really well for bed. This includes making no screens before bed a habit. When we're looking at our phones or our tablets or our laptops or even the TV screen just before we go to bed, we're receiving blue light into our eyes, which tells our bodies it's time to be awake. Now, the same light that's emitted from our screens is the same light that's emitted outdoors as well during the day. So basically what we're doing is we're just confusing our body, saying it's daytime when actually we want to be going to sleep. So for 90 minutes before going to bed, try to limit your screen use. And if you can altogether stop using it, that's fantastic. If not, you can have a night mode on your phones and tablets, which kind of reduces the blue light, but some blue light still does get through. So no screens is better than obviously using the night mode. We also want to reduce other artificial light like room lighting, as this will help promote the release of melatonin, our sleep hormone, which will help us get to sleep quicker and stay asleep for longer. Finally, with this one, try to reduce any stressful activities before you go to bed. So we have a stress hormone called cortisol, and we want that to be at its lowest point before we go to sleep at night. And doing things like answering work emails or having stressful conversations or listening to the news if it's particularly disturbing just before you go to bed can upset the hormone balance and make it more difficult to fall asleep at night. We also don't want to be doing too much heavy exercise just before we go to bed. Exercise is great and it's a great thing for sleep if it's done earlier in the day, but just before bed we want to try and limit heavy exercise if possible. To include in the 90-minute wind-down routine, you might want to replace these more stressful activities with some relaxing ones, such as reading or listening to music. Number 3 is preparing your bedroom for sleep. Now, the ideal environment for sleep is a cool, dark, quiet environment. So when we're thinking about dark, blackout blinds or blackout curtains are a saviour for sleep because they get rid of all of that light, which just helps, again, the body to know that it's time to sleep and the melatonin to be released so that we can get ready for sleep. The ideal temperature to sleep at is between 17 to 18 degrees. So in the summer, having a window open can be helpful. And in the winter, making sure that we haven't got the heating on too high. The last thing is, and this is not always in our control, but trying to have a quiet environment. So if you do live in a noisy neighbourhood, it might be shutting the windows and getting a fan instead, because the noise at night can also really disturb sleep. Lastly, you might also want to remove the screens from your room so that you can avoid that temptation of watching that last show or flicking through social media just before you go to bed. Number 4 is only use your bed for sleeping. So it can be really tempting during the day just to jump onto your bed to do some work or to watch Netflix or even just to sit there and scroll through your phone. But when we're doing this, our body's associating your bed with being awake rather than being asleep. And that's why, even when you're feeling really tired sometimes, you're not able to fall asleep because your body just associates that environment with being awake. Number 5 is get up if you're lying awake in bed for more than 20 to 25 minutes. Now, I know this sounds really counterproductive, but actually, going back to the point I just mentioned about your body associating your bed with a place of wakefulness rather than restfulness, we want to get up if we're not falling asleep because it'll just kind of reinforce that being awake in bed. So if you can't fall asleep within 20 to 25 minutes, get up, do something relaxing, might be listening to music. It can be anything really, as long as you're not doing anything stressful or looking at a screen. And then when you are feeling tired, return to bed and hopefully fall asleep a lot easier. It's also really important to note that actually if you aren't falling asleep at night, kind of accepting that you're probably not going to have as much sleep you want to that night, and you may be feeling a little bit more tired the next day. By accepting this, you're actually taking the pressure off yourself to fall asleep. The worst thing for sleep at night is when we have the anxiety around sleep or we're trying really, really hard to fall asleep. The harder we try to fall asleep, the less likely it is that sleep is going to come. So although I know that you really want to fall asleep at night, if you are struggling to fall asleep, accept that this night's probably not going to be the best one for sleep. You are going to be slightly tired tomorrow, but you will get whatever sleep you can. If you are already struggling to fall asleep, then actually being in bed and resting, that kind of dozing that you do, that half sleep, is better than nothing. So if you've tried to get up and you've got up and when you've returned to bed you still can't fall asleep, actually resting in bed, you will still be getting some of the benefits of sleep. Number 6, have a strict no caffeine after noon rule. Now, this is probably the hardest one for me personally because I love my coffee. And I have to admit, I'm probably having my last cup at 2:00 latest, just because I like to have my coffee after lunch. So I am not doing the before noon rule, although it is really good if you can get to that. If you can get to that, absolutely do it. But I brought mine down from 4 p.m. to 2 p.m. at its latest now, which is helping. Now, the reason why it's important to limit caffeine in the afternoon is because caffeine has a half-life of between 6 to 7 hours. And what this means is that every 6 hours, half of the amount of caffeine in your body is released. Okay, so it's exited the body. So this means that if you are actually having a coffee at 1:00, you'll still have half the amount of that coffee at 7:00. Okay, and then you will have a quarter of the amount of that coffee at 1 a.m. in the morning. So when we're having caffeine in the afternoon or even in the evening, even though we feel like we've had it a few hours before bed, that caffeine lingers around in our system for 6 hours before half of it goes, and then another 6 hours before another half of it goes, and so on. Now, a lot of people say to me, but you know what, I sleep fine after a cup of coffee at night, I can have it at night and I feel okay. So studies that have been done around caffeine and sleep is that it's not even about the falling asleep that's the issue. People can fall asleep fine after having some caffeine, but it reduces the quality of your sleep, and in particular REM sleep. REM sleep is the sleep in which we have our dreams, and also we can then wake up feeling unrefreshed. Unrefreshed being waking up feeling like we've not slept at all. And that's the effect that caffeine can have. So we may not always notice it because we fall asleep well, but the quality of our sleep is diminished when we're having caffeine in the afternoon or in the evening. Number 7 is to reduce your alcohol intake. Now, this is kind of similar to caffeine, and there's a lot of debate around as to whether alcohol helps sleep or doesn't help sleep. We can fall asleep a lot quicker when we've had some alcohol at night. However, again, it really, really impacts the quality of our sleep. So when we have been drinking or even just had one glass of alcohol, it significantly impacts the quality of our deep sleep, or even means that we're not able to access those deeper levels of sleep, and our REM sleep as well. And that's why we wake up in the morning feeling really unrefreshed. It's a combination of dehydration, the effects of the alcohol, and also poor sleep that gives us that dreaded hangover in the morning. Even if we've slept loads of hours, so we've slept, 10 hours, we still wake up feeling unrefreshed. And that's just because the quality of the sleep hasn't been any good. In the studies that have been done, it also shows that drinking alcohol the night before reduces the amount of physical activity that we do the next day and how rested we feel. And that can then just have a knock-on effect to the next night and the next night and the next night and so on. I'm not saying to give up alcohol completely for sleep. That's not the aim of this video here. The point is know what it's doing to your body and what it's potentially doing to your sleep. So if you have a big day coming up the next day, you've got an important meeting at work, or you've got something really important you want to be doing, you want to be really alert for, then maybe skip out the alcohol that evening for that day. Alcohol should be used as a treat, not every day, but maybe once or twice a week. And that way, if you're having 1 or 2 nights where you're having alcohol-affected sleep, it shouldn't matter too long in the long term. If you're doing it every day, that's going to have a significant impact. So number 8 is to get outdoors early in the morning and exercise earlier in the day. So getting outdoors in the morning and exercising in the day makes people feel more alert during the day and also helps them to fall asleep a lot quicker in the evening. This is because getting outside earlier in the morning really helps with our circadian rhythm. Basically, the natural light emitted wakes our bodies up, and it kind of kicks our circadian rhythm into gear. Our circadian rhythm is basically our 24-hour clock, kicks it into gear so that actually our hormones are all well balanced and our body knows that it's time to be awake, and it gets tired quicker in the evening when it's time to sleep. If you are working early in the morning, ways to get some good natural light is maybe by having your coffee or your breakfast in the garden in the morning. It's easy to do when the weather's good, hardest to do when the weather's not as good. Can't say that I do it all the time during the winter. But yeah, getting outdoors, having your coffee there, or even maybe walking to work and or choosing to do a little bit of a walk before work as well can be a really handy way of getting that early morning daylight. So number 9 is to eat earlier in the evening. Now, why this is important is because our body needs to be at a certain temperature to sleep well at night. If we're eating too close to bedtime, then what that means is our body's having to work extra hard to digest that food, which increases our core temperature of our body and can mean that we don't sleep as well at night. It's really important not to go hungry either at night. So you don't want to be hungry going to sleep. So just make sure you're eating at a good time, not too close to bedtime, but having a good meal. Typically, eating before 8 p.m. is advised when I've looked into the research around this, and eating before 8 p.m. should be enough time for your body to digest its food and for your body temperature to be where it needs to be when you're sleeping. Finally, number 10 is creating boundaries between home life and work life. Now, this is particularly important at the moment when a lot of us are finding ourselves working from home a lot more, and we don't have the typical commute which separates our work life and our home life like we did previously. So why this is important is because if we're continuing our work life and it's slipping into our evenings, we're not having a clear boundary for the end of our work day. That can carry work-related stress into the evening, and then we know the impact that stress can have on sleep at night as well. So what's really important is actually having a clear, defined boundary. And it can be something as simple as, putting your stuff away, packing your stuff away after you finish work to signal kind of this is the end of the workday. and then moving into a next room if you've got the luxury of being able to work from a particular room to continue your evening. Another really good way of doing it is actually by replacing your what used to be commute with something like a walk. So just going for a walk after work before coming back into home and then your evening starting. Something else that might be helpful is by actually writing down all your tasks you need to do for the next day before you finish work, so that you're not continuing to think about those things in the evening. You can kind of put that to bed and then come back to it the next day when it's time to start work again. So guys, I know that's a lot to take in, and what I probably wouldn't suggest is going in and trying to implement all 10 of those things all at one go. When I was doing this, I had to start off with one thing and build from there. The most important thing I would say is to have a clear bedtime and wake up time, because that allows your body to get into a routine. So if you haven't already done that, start with that, and then I'd probably say try to implement 1 to 2 other strategies after you've done that, and build from there. Also, don't worry if you're not seeing any immediate changes. It does take a while. It took me about 3 months to see an improvement in my sleep. It can take people less than that, can take people longer. I did start to see an improvement before then, but it was significant at about 3 months. So you need to stick with these things. They're not easy, and it's particularly hard when you're not seeing an immediate result, but stick with them. They will improve your sleep. Finally, as I mentioned before, if you are really struggling with sleep, try not to focus too much on the lack of quality or amount of sleep that you're getting. I know that's easier said than done, but the worst thing for sleep is putting up the pressure on ourselves to fall asleep more. The more we try to fall asleep, the less likely it is that sleep's going to come. Hopefully what you'll find is that once sleep improves a little bit, it has a knock-on effect, and all those other things do improve as well. So thanks for watching this video. I have also done a blog post on ways to improve your sleep as well, using the same 10 tips, and I will put a link to that in the description if you want to have a read of that. Now, as always, really important to please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Give this video a like and share with anyone that you feel may benefit from it. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.